Good morning, everyone. It's Justin Edhouse here. Today, we're going to be talking about the benefits of hyperconvergence. Going to do things slightly differently today. We've got a panel of guys from here at Bechtle, so we're going to take you through some aspects of the VMware HCI solution. So yeah, without further ado, let's get kicked off. But first, we've got a little bit of housekeeping to do for our people that have attended before. You'll know we keep everyone muted. If you have a question, please ask it in the chat box that's provided, and we'll try to get to them all at the end of this session. So, quick intro to everybody that's here. Next slide. So we've got Dan Hicks, our VMware Transformation Manager, John Moore, who many have seen some of his previous webinars. He's our Hybrid Infrastructure Consultant, and Ray Wakefield, our Virtualization Business Development Manager. Obviously, you know me, I've done a few of these now as well. So yeah, I'm going to hand over to Dan, who's going to take you through the set of slides. Over to you, Dan.
Thank you, Justin. Thanks for joining us today. Really excited. This, for those of you that have worked with myself in the past, it's an area of passion for me around hyperconvergence. But I wanted to kick things off just talking you through what we call a future-ready approach, and this is very much what we've seen working with customers like yourselves at the moment through this pandemic period, that many of us have had to go into a response mode and looking at how we ensure business continuity with the situation that we've got. You've started to see a few of our customers working with the account teams and the specialists here around adapting their business. So really trying to build in that business resiliency, optimize the costs, driving efficiency, giving them that ability to be more adaptable than possibly they were pre-pandemic. And where we're really seeing the next year's focus is that acceleration piece. We've had some of the really difficult and sad news in retail, for instance, where businesses that haven't adapted have really struggled to cope with this situation, and will struggle to build back stronger. And it's about taking that digital first approach. We've talked a lot about digital transformation with customers, and there's certain ones that really take that on board and look to drive change. But now is the time to be speaking to your team, your account team here at Bechtle, and discussing what are the outcomes that you're looking for as an organization, and how the Bechtle team can really help support to harden your business against future challenges and maximize some of the opportunities that we see out there. But if you are going to take that step towards a digital first, digital business approach, you've got to start thinking about a new approach to infrastructure. And it's primarily because the challenges that customers have faced are compounded by the fact that many of the IT organizations that we speak to are still using that traditional three-tiered architecture. And that classic approach to infrastructure, you have those three distinct silos with compute and your servers and the blades, external source storage, be it your SAN or your NAS arrays, and then specific networking hardware, whatever flavor that particularly takes. But not only do you have that distinct hardware in each of those silos, you often have separate siloed teams that work in each of those areas. So it becomes harder to collaborate, to work together, looking for the resolution of problems. And the old approach has worked and delivered tremendous value to us over the past 10 to 15 years, but it started to become unsustainable. And it's probably, if I'm looking at my panel of experts here, Justin, this is probably one that I'd point at yourself. What challenges are you seeing customers face with that traditional three-tier approach?
Yeah, so I think you've already hit the nail on the head with some of these things, and I think first and foremost, the complexity thing is a really big part of this. I think complexity, not just in the way it's operated, but refreshed, purchased, it's the whole life cycle that has complexity, and that complexity naturally brings cost. It gets expensive to maintain that, and in a world where we're starting to see many people move workloads into different places with more OpEx models in the cloud. That cost is slightly unwelcome these days. But I think another really interesting one is how, when you're operating a 3-tier architecture, it's harder to align IT operations to business requirements. So you move the IT teams further away from business operations and getting business outcomes. So I think those three combined just show how creaky the 3-tier really is.
It's interesting. I think that sort of that shift we've seen over the years, that we worked together for a long while, that shift towards the IT shifting towards the value of the business as digital becomes a bigger and more important part to what they're trying to do. It's really interesting, Justin. And I think, as I mentioned, some of the challenges that we've seen out there with organizations in the retail sector, failure to change is what puts these businesses at risk. So if they don't evolve, they risk being left behind by their competition, which is precisely what we're seeing. It's not the case that clothing retail, there are success stories in that space, but they tend to be those digital businesses that we have seen spring up over more recent years. And that legacy infrastructure carries probably what I would say 3 significant risks. So first is that escalating cost, related to the complexity point Justin just made. That legacy infrastructure is expensive. I remember seeing recently in the healthcare industry, there was a survey done of the IT budgets, and 81% of that went to just maintaining the infrastructure, stifling the investment they would like to sort of focus on. And those high upfront costs were due to sort of multi-year capacity purchases, prolonging the procurement cycle. I remember seeing a police force, and it was talking about the challenges they had around time to market. Many of the vendors escalate their maintenance cost as the infrastructure ages. And again, touching again to the complexity point there that we just mentioned, reducing your business agility. So agility is probably, when I think about the value of IT, is the word that I hear most. How can I be agile? Because you are reacting to change that you weren't expecting. And legacy infrastructure is purpose-built, so it can't necessarily adapt to the new use cases and isn't going to necessarily be that ideal fit for modern scale-out applications. And in response, you find that businesses must maintain the specialized IT staff to perform the cumbersome manual processes that are out there. And the IT staff can't be quickly reassigned to other roles as initiatives arise. So those high costs of maintaining those processes and the staff and the skills, all it's doing is eliminating budget that we could be using for innovation. And then the final point, and it's sometimes not obvious as the first thought, is that there's that increased security risk. Cyber attacks are on the rise. Legacy infrastructure is often the target there. So highly manual lifecycle management often leaves that legacy hardware exposed to attacks. And those cyber attacks could cost, large financial costs, but if anything, it's that unaccountable brand damage that can occur related to cyber. So with that in mind, I suppose the important place to start is, what is HCI? And if I can give myself 2 minutes, I think the best people to talk about this are some of the guys from VMware. So I'm just going to play this video, and we have obviously done all the testing for this, so hopefully we shouldn't have any issues.
Organizations today are running 3-tier architectures consisting of compute, storage, and networking, and have been for many years. While this architecture has served us well in the past, it's expensive to build, complex to operate, and difficult to scale. It can't respond quickly enough to meet today's application demands. This lack of agility is why business units are considering public cloud services. They don't want to wait for IT infrastructure to support their applications, but they are concerned about losing control, higher costs, and lack of enterprise-class security. Modern hardware has made the 3-tier architecture obsolete. Higher performance memory and CPUs, combined with advanced storage technology, lets you converge your entire infrastructure and run it all on x86-based servers with internal SSD drives. This is called Hyper-Converged Infrastructure, or HCI. So why should you consider HCI? Because it saves money and delivers higher agility. HCI dramatically lowers CapEx costs because you just need to buy x86 servers and not proprietary storage arrays, controllers, and fiber channel networking. And with everything in the servers, operations become much simpler, requiring less time and expertise for routine tasks. HCI also allows you to be more responsive to the business. You can have hardware up and running in a few hours and spin up workloads in minutes. Configuration is based on policies aligned with the applications, which eliminates the need for complicated constructs like runs and volumes. And you can scale up and out by adding drives and x86 servers without disruption, a lot of reconfiguration, or capital expense. With HCI, organizations can deploy cloud-like infrastructure on premises with lower costs, more control, and higher security than public cloud. HCI, powered by vSAN. To learn more, visit vmware.com/products/vSAN and vmware.com/products/hyper-converged-infrastructure.
Thank you, VMware. I think it's easier to remember the product/vSAN as the web link to go to there. But as I say, let's go through. Quite often I see a lot of these sort of slides from vendors, but the reason I wanted to bring this up was we're seeing that the storage market is pretty much going to be flat next year. So IDC's recent perspective on that was flat from a storage point of view. However, the HCI market is actually going to grow from a compound point of view 30% through 2021. So storage, we're not seeing the growth across the board, but in HCI, that's absolutely, and it correlates with what we see here at Bechtle with our customers. So on that basis, when we think about the customers we've been dealing with, John, this I feel is one for you. Who's been making the decisions from our customers to go HCI?
I mean, you know, it ranges across the entire team, and it does depend on the size of the organisation. But you know, there's been a heavy push, I think, in terms of the kind of management space. So you know, IT directors, heads of IT, that kind of space, and that pretty much has been based across you know, flexibility, agility. I mean, all the things you kind of talked about before, really. And you know, I don't like to talk about COVID because, you know, if we pretend it's not there, hopefully it'll go away. But you know, what it has done is shown in most infrastructures where that lack of flexibility lies and stuff like that. And so I think that's probably why there's more management emphasis in terms of that direction. But I don't think we can also rule out, you know, I regularly talk to you know, operational and admin people who see the value of having you know, having that kind of AI driven front, having a lot of that environment made simpler in terms of the decision making process, and you know, right down into kind of areas that probably you know, if we go back to early HCI, were almost, I was deemed an enemy. So you know, networking, storage, you know, those areas that were, you know, almost considered silos 5 years ago can now see some of the benefits of HCI in terms of actually not having to just do admin, concentrate on the bit that actually the management see, I think, which is the application and services that the business run, rather than necessarily, you know, I hate the phrase fit for purpose, because it sounds like you're making you're taking some kind of compromise, but it's exactly that, fit for purpose. You get the performance you need, and you can deliver it at a fast pace. And I think that's why, you know, we pretty much, in simple answer to the question, across the piece we see, you know, engagement in terms of that decision.
I don't think there is these questions, by the way, panel, there isn't a right answer to them, but if there was, I think you probably got it, John. So when we've looked at the decision makers, it's a survey that we ran recently, who ultimately decided, the biggest driver were the directors of infrastructure, people pushing that change from the top down. But I think what was really leaps out at me was that it's the vSphere admin team that came second in that list. And it's something I've seen many a time where the skills they have in vSphere are absolutely applicable to the vSAN side of things. So driving that change, they're feeling comfortable in that space. But also the storage admins, as you say, where previously you'd have that contention of whose empire is this, but it's that collective approach to having an IT team that's itself agile, flexible in the same way that the infrastructure is, because they realise, as you say, it can help them from their day-to-day jobs. So top down, bottom up, whichever way you look at this, it's about being an advocate for change and helping deliver the IT team closer to that value and the business outcomes that Justin mentioned right back at the start of this. Really interesting. So if we're thinking about HCI, I just wanted to call out that who's leading the way, and there's some great vendors, we've worked with across the board here, but VMware are actually the number one HCI software vendor. So 38.1% market share, it's grown 86% year on year, and that's a mix of some of the ready nodes or the key the appliances from the likes of Dell with VxRail. So what is the approach from VMware on HCI? Well, what you'll probably hear is them talk about full stack HCI, and this is about, through that cloud operating model being applied to the private cloud. It starts with the area we all know best. So from a compute perspective, it's about the vSphere side of things. From a storage perspective, bringing in all the data services that you expect in these enterprise solutions, vSAN delivering value. And for those of you that noticed this must be 4 years ago, I would have thought, the acquisition of Nicira, which led to the release of NSX, seeing huge interest in NSX around things like microsegmentation. So VMware's platform there, that virtualization of the traditional data center resources, but then a commonality, a common platform of from the vRealize suite, from the automation and the operation. I often think about those two concepts of your operational management leads into automation. How can we drive that? Automation is something we're starting to see embraced by more and more customers. And that's pulled together. So for those of you that are thinking, well, how could, we've got these point solutions, how does it fit in? And it fits in within what they call VMware's Cloud Foundation. It's Cloud Foundation that pulls together all of those individual virtualization technologies and layers in the automation and the management piece. Again, I'm seeing over the last couple of weeks, at least 2 of the customers that previously hadn't looked at containerization as their application route forwards are starting to look at that and investigating how could Cloud Foundation be a platform for Kubernetes. And whether this is running in the private cloud or in the public cloud. So speak to your teams here around things like the VMware Cloud on AWS and VMware Cloud on Azure. These are Cloud Foundation platforms running in the hyperscaler environments, making it really easy to seamlessly move your workloads from your on-premise to the cloud. Take advantage of the native services these hyperscalers are running. So with that in mind, the VMware approach, that full stack, covering all of the areas that you're likely to need to address on premise. I suppose my question now is, what are people doing on these HCI platforms? What applications are we seeing out there? This is probably one I think that feels like a Ray question. Ray?
Absolutely. Thanks, Dan. Very interesting. You know, we just have to look back 5-10 years ago, and the whole landscape was very different. You know, there was a requirement for people to run on physical hardware. There was this perception that a converged system wouldn't be able to deliver the IOPS that they need. But from what we're seeing now, that the short answer is pretty much everything. Any type of workload seems to be running HCI. The benefits that you have, the agility, the flexibility, all of those, as well as the the modern developments with storage and performance, allow us to run pretty much anything. So applications like SQL and Exchange are some that I've seen great growth on an HCI platform, as well as those slightly more unusual ones like VDI, which is a great example for an HCI platform too.
Interesting. So your answer is everything in many respects.
In many respects, yeah. There's so many benefits for going for an HCI platform.
I might have to go to the audience to decide how many points you get for an answer that is everything. But let's have a look and see whether Ray's view of the world correlates with what we're seeing. And top of the list, what applications are we seeing? Well, let's think VDI. Absolutely, I think it's one of the areas where we've seen the early adopters really look at HCI for the fact that you've got that granular growth, and that quite often with VDI you've got rapid scaling or uncertainty, and having to plan and work out that capacity for a longer period of time with the old architecture, really challenging. Also, the behavior of a desktop is very different from a server. The IOPS can vary rapidly. So you're looking for that agile platform for VDI. Then the area that you did mention, Ray, and I think, yeah, exactly. So in my mind, quite often I gravitate towards that VDI as the answer. But what's fascinating was that 67% of respondents were saying it's SQL that's running on there. They've got SQL workloads running on there, and I feel it's for that confidence they have around the performance using the all flash options that you've got with these HCI solutions. Microsoft, unsurprisingly, if there's an application survey and it doesn't involve a great deal of Microsoft, to be disappointed. Many customers looking at SharePoint. We're seeing obviously large migrations towards Office 365, but equally I'm seeing lots of people take their on-premise Exchange servers onto those HCI platforms. And then last but not least, it's about some of the new use cases. So people looking at your Hadoops and your big data applications or NoSQL databases, all of those different options that are out there, people are starting to think, well, how could HCI help me? I think I probably get tired of using the word a journey, but I believe we are as an industry, as IT teams, and that journey is towards cloud, something that's cloud-like. Now, where do you start? And I think this is very much how I view the world. It's how the teams here view the world. It's how VMware look at it. This all started with vSphere, the virtualization of the compute. Some of you have done that 20 years ago. That's where we started, and now the core is the virtualization of the compute and that storage piece. It's about core HCI. So powered by vSAN, starting the management of storage in a very similar way to that you've looked at managing your compute. That full stack HCI, I've touched on the cloud foundation piece, and thinking about this as a journey, thinking that you start with core gives you the confidence to look at the full stack, start to get some of that benefit that people see from virtualization of the network. And then you're building yourself up to that step further beyond to the hybrid cloud. And there's the two areas I've called out there. VMC on AWS, VMC on Azure. Again, the take up over the last 6 months has far exceeded on the VMC on AWS side what we saw previously. People adopting this, running proof of concepts, taking stuff into production, really seeing a push forwards a greater pace than we have previously. This is all well and good, so you've got lots of options about how you invest and what you invest in, but John, I'm probably going to lean on you for this one. What do you think our customers need to consider when they're investing in HCI? What are the things that they're focused on?
I think one of the first place always with this is the what is the business requirement? What are the workloads we're running on that infrastructure? HCI isn't the perfect solution for everyone, but for I would say the majority, definitely a growing number of use cases. It definitely is around that total cost of ownership piece, around the around the management costs, around the capex cost up front, the ability to scale out as well as up. It's really, we've talked about agility a lot, but these are all the places where HCI is going to give us an advantage. But where that all comes from is what's the business trying to do, and what are those workloads that we see being deployed and we may need to deploy in the future.
So what I'm hearing there are you're seeing it very much the aligning of that business benefit, making sure you're not forcing HCI towards anyone, but you're seeing that increased number of use cases. Your challenge there, I think, this is interesting. Let's see again, reveal some answers around this. The reduction of SAN capital costs is top of the list from things they're concerned about, and I think it's important to consider, as you say, the total cost of ownership, the capex, the opex, the complexity that Justin mentioned earlier. All of those bits building in towards that cost side, but simple reduction of capital costs, absolutely, very much on the list. Responding to those business needs, so giving yourself that agility side. Introducing all flash, I think there's a number of the customers we've worked with, they've looked at vSAN as a way of entering the all flash space, where previously they've looked at some of the niche vendors out there that are specialists in all flash storage arrays, and great performance, but a great price tag as well. And finally, that support new native cloud applications, as I mentioned, seeing faster and greater adoption. And maybe it's an area that you've not yourselves thought about moving into, but speak to your teams here and ask them, how can you help me unlock some of the value that other customers are seeing with these new application models. So I think this is an important question, because it's about how can we help you, our customers, understand the value of HCI with vSAN. And as it's an important question, I'm going to try and get a little bit from all of you here, if you wouldn't mind. So maybe Justin, can you give us a couple of ways in which you feel we can help the customers out there understand the value to them?
Sure. So I could use an interesting analogy now. When you go through refresh cycles of 3-tier, you're changing, imagine a slice of the cake. You're changing your storage, you're changing your network, you're changing your servers. Well, actually, you could view HCI as changing the cake. And so what you need to do is you need to have assurance for the business that it's the right thing to do. You need the collective to be involved, and you have an education piece, which is really important. So that means you need to engage well with us. You need to engage widely with us, because we have all this expertise, and we have all of the capability to demonstrate the values, to help you understand the technologies, to proof of concept solutions, and get you to that it will work for you, it will work in the way you expect, and that is your starting point. It's engagement with us. We have a great thing, if you have a look on our website, about Bechtle journeys. There's that word again, Dan, journeys. But we take you through the whole process end to end. So it isn't engaging on just a box shift of a new SAN, it is the whole piece. And as a part of that engagement, you get to deal with all the people you see above and much more besides.
John, anything to add in that space?
Yeah, I think the two takeaways for me in terms of that value is that is the understanding the business, and I think it's we miss it often. We get bogged down with I've got a 15 terabyte SAN and 3 hosts, and they've come up for their 5-year renewal. We need to move forward. But it's really important that we kind of move away from that and look at what the business is trying to do on that. What are the applications? What's the desire for a hybrid infrastructure? Where does cloud fit into this? How agile does the business need to be? Do we need to think about data governance and that kind of stuff? So I think the business absolutely is a primary driver. And then I'm always going to say it, workload. With all of these things, we mentioned total cost of ownership. Flash is a commodity item. It's no longer the dream piece we're going to add. What's often missed when we start looking at workloads and sizing and stuff like that is quite often the busiest workloads we have are only make up a very small amount of our infrastructure. So we might have 240 VMs and 10 of them are SQL. And this is this for me is a real prime driver to talk about how I can give you that performance without having to invest in something that was scaled to 100% of your workload running at the 10% number. So I think the 2 primary things: what's the business trying to do? Where are we trying to go? What are we actually trying to do as a business? And then absolutely key that workload. What are we putting on that tin? What are we trying to do?
So I'm hearing from Justin, if you need a cake, if you need to get on a journey, the value of partnership, Justin, is what I'm hearing there, and helping build the business case. John, I think I heard workload at some point, and absolutely. And then I just wanted to make sure you're included here as well, Ray, because this is an important one.
Thanks.
Something that we have, I think this is something that we've done together a number of times. And it is if we're going to help the customers, that we can look at maybe a vSAN assessment.
Absolutely. We're quite fortunate nowadays, I think, to have such amazing tools that can actually do that. I think the traditional way of customers that may have purchased over a 3 or 5 year plan is that they would anticipate what they needed for that 3 to 5 years and have a big capex expend, and well, I hope that the 3 to 5 years everything is as they expected. Whereas if we do a workload assessment, as John alluded to, which is kind of key, we can analyze the requirement that's available now and specifically design the solution for that. And because HCI is quite modular, you can change and adapt and scale out. So I think that one of the key things that was mentioned there is that we need to assess the workload that's required for that particular opportunity. And we've got some great tools to do that. And that's where we can help our customers go down that journey with some.
Must be a cost to this, Ray, surely.
No.
No
we
cost,
can do that.
no cost.
We can do the assessment as a value add for sure.
I think that's often, I think over the years we've worked together, that power of partnership is absolutely key. Working together, helping you as our customers be the advocates of change within your business. Let us support you, encourage us, invite us in, let us understand your business journey, your business outcome. And on that note, do we have any questions?
We do indeed. We've got, I don't know if we're going to get, some of these are big questions actually. Oh. So let's see how we do. So I'll start with the first one. My team is highly skilled for my current environment. What are the challenges to getting skilled up in HCI? Who would like to take that one? John?
Yeah, I'll take that. Well, I guess that's the good news story. I mean, we're talking about a change of deployment. We're not necessarily talking about a change in skill sets. So, we're still going to be utilizing those same vSphere admin skills. We're still going to need to deploy knowledge in terms of networking and storage and that kind of stuff. But we're going to use it effectively with the common tool sets that we already understand. So, you know, the whole point of some of this journey is, you know, we're not bringing in kind of on-point products that you know, someone needs to go and do a 2-week training course to get there. We're using the kind of commonality of the infrastructure that they already have and building on that. So, you know, the short answer to that is there shouldn't be a massive, you know, there is a learning journey. You know, this infrastructure is different to manage, but we're not having to go and relearn, you know, how to manage this stuff.
Concept's still the same, yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Okay. And actually, I think this next one kind of dovetails a little bit into that last one. How easy is it to migrate workloads to HCI? Dan.
I think from a migration point of view, obviously got to be sensitive to the challenges a particular business have, but very easy. I'm seeing, thinking about that migration, I'm seeing people migrate easily to vSAN platforms, but also that migration even to VMC on AWS that I mentioned, or VMC on Azure, using tools like SRM to fail it over. But very simple. You're changing very little in that infrastructure, and as we've mentioned, those commonality of skill sets and tools make it a fairly simple process.
Indeed. I think most of us have been through one journey or another to a virtualization platform. So once you virtualize your workloads, they become just data. So it's data migration, really. Yes. So do you know what? I'm going to take this one actually, because this is quite interesting. Is there a right time to move to HCI? Well, I kind of mentioned that a little bit in terms of when I was talking about the cake and changing a slice. It's easy to get wrapped up in different life cycles. That is one of the challenges. Is when is the right time? When you're changing a SAN, it's got to clear my 3-year, 5-year period. When you're talking servers, it's the same sort of thing. Networking sometimes a little bit longer. And here what we're actually talking about is all of the above. So yeah, there is a challenge to be had there from a budgets perspective. Sometimes it's a case of actually starting the journey and using budgets and standing up the HCI environment and slowly folding things over as and when they expire. Other businesses get braver about it, and they'll do a wholesale change. But again, it comes from understanding your business's requirements, understanding the financial requirements, and really being able to demonstrate to the business that the faster they get there, the more they realize the benefits of HCI. So I definitely think there's no right or wrong answer, and you really just take it as how your business needs to consume.
Feels
I'd also add to that, Justin. This is, and it kind of relates into the training question. Some of the benefits of having that common tool set is, we have customers that are running, running VMware with a I don't know, 6-node cluster with a storage backend, and right next to that they have a vSAN cluster for their VDI workload. They're able to manage that in very similar ways in terms of what they're doing. Single tool set to manage and have the visibility of that. And so we don't necessarily, again, we don't need to get caught into that trap of my SAN's come to its 5-year end of life, I need to replace everything. We don't need to do that. And in fact, we can even use an HCI environment as storage, for a workload as well. So, we have, and this is the whole point, we have a lot more flexibility than we did in the old world.
We call it hybrid infrastructure for a reason, eh?
I think I was going to chime in there just quickly. I think the key bit to me is to the audience, to our customers, speak to us as early as possible. That's the message that I'd like you to take away. But great questions, really interesting.
Got one more if anyone's up for it.
Go on, let's creep it in.
All right, we're running out of time, but can I upgrade my existing environment to VMware HCI? Who wants that one? This is a much talked about subject here within the team, actually, about taking an existing environment and migrating it. So let's see, John.
I always get into trouble when I answer this question. I mean, absolutely. So in theory, right, we can take all of that x86 hardware and redeploy it as vSAN. That's the theory. The practice of that is that, you know, it needs to be on you know, on the HCI list. It needs to, we need to make sure that those parts are compatible. You kind of want to have to, again, this is, you know, I won't bore you again with saying workload, 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 but it absolutely is that. Just because you've got a couple of 1 terabyte SSDs and some 4 terabyte hard drives isn't necessarily going to give you the best experience. But again, I guess the simple answer to that is, if it's something you're interested in, it's very easy to look at, you know, the server model, manufacturer, the disks, the controllers, and everything else, and say, well, you know, this is what's going to give you the best experience.
Good stuff. Compliant hardware, best practice approach, always the way. You'll hear us preach it possibly far too much, but it really is important for that customer outcome. So thank you everyone. I guess a little bit more, obviously we're nearing the end of the year, so what's coming next? What would you like to see for us? Again, we want your feedback, we want your ideas. So if you've got any ideas that you'd like to give us for future presentations, we're all ears. We love a challenge, you know, and I think if it's on your minds, then it's probably on a lot of people's minds as well. So definitely reach out through your account manager and to everyone here at the BST team within Bechtle. We're always happy to hear from you.
Absolutely.
Good stuff. And on that note, I think we've done okay on time. So thank you everybody for your time. If there are no more questions, we'll stay on the line if that's okay for another few minutes if anyone wants to just chime in. But for those of you that are leaving us, have a great day.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, everyone.